I recently completed another Crab's Treasure and I absolutely loved it. Even through the more glitchy moments.
What the fuck? I fell through the map! No!
Aggro Crab made a masterpiece that easily tops any game I've played this year.
I have a couple other games I'm excited for though.
See, I only had one major problem throughout my first playthrough of the game, and that was Steven. I'm sick and tired of his ass. Constantly talking trash to me. You should watch him when he streams this game, at like 3 in the morning, how much trash he talks about me. Like I'm always on his mind, head ass. Steven's one of my best friends, but through his first playthrough of the game, he constantly talked about how much better he was than me. And I wasn't gonna take that, cause I'm Steven's #1 hater.
Hey guys, I suck at games and James is so much better than me.
I decided I was gonna do a challenge that I hadn't seen a single person do yet, just to rub it in Steven's face that I'm better than him. I was gonna beat another Crab's Treasure with no shell, level 0, and no upgrades. This is the ultimate challenge for this game, and no one had done it. I started up the game and skipped through all the cutscene. Immediately, the no shell part of the run is ruined, since the first shell that gets marked in the Shellopedia is the home shell that you start with. And there was gonna be 4 other shells that were mandatory to equip in the run, making for a total of 5. These were the home, soda can, fuse plug, spring, and perfect whirl. These are the only shells I'm allowed to equip when I have to. I should also mention, there's these things called stowaways in the game that you can equip that give you different stat buffs and passives. The thing is, they only work if you have a shell, so I had absolutely no way to increase my base stats. Rushing through the start, I picked up the fork and made my way to the first moon shell. My goal was to beat the game, so I was going to skip as many bosses as I could. I had no knowledge about any skips since I went into this run immediately after my first playthrough, and I did no research beforehand. The first obstacle that came to my mind was that I needed to get into the castle walls in the first place. In order to even enter the castle, you had to be wearing a shell, so I had to figure out how to get around that. I headed straight to the castle just to see if there was anything I could do to get around having a shell. Seeing these boxes made of sand and the little indent in the walls, I immediately thought maybe I can run across this. And thankfully, with a little bit of platforming, I'm able to get up on the castle walls. Running along the sand wall, I head further into the castle, bypassing the gate and making it to the queen without a shell. I spoke to the queen, grabbed the hook, and made my way towards the moon snail's domain. This is where the first mandatory shell is, the soda can. I tried to run past this part, but the game puts up a barrier that blocks you from continuing unless you kill this crab with a shell spell. Getting through, I let this little crab break the shell off my back before I continued forward. Skipping through the platforming section, I arrived at the first mandatory boss of the run. I tried running past him, but I couldn't because a barrier formed that blocked the way forward. He kills me very quickly, leading to the first death in my run, and trust me, this number is gonna go up a lot. Getting back to it, I put up slightly more of a fight, but I still die again and again. On my 4th attempt, I decided to be super aggro and run straight to him, and this is where something insane happened. As I was hitting him, he began slowly rising up against the barrier, allowing me to get free swings on him until he was almost dead. It got to the point where he rose so high that I couldn't hit him consistently, so I had to rely on the last swing of Krill's 4-hit combo to get some damage on him. I keep at it until he dies, and I had officially beaten the first boss. Continuing forward, I talked to the moon snail, getting the only required upgrade in this run, which is the Shelleport. Leaving the moon snail's domain, I made my way back to the castle. I sped through all the platforming and made my way to the second unskippable boss. As I ran into her boss room, this enemy broke through the wall and chased after me. I assumed he would disappear as soon as I started the cutscene for her fight, but
I will ascend!
oh shit!
Oh my god, he's ascending!
Oh my god, shit! Shoot him down! The bastard stayed in the room and I had to fight Magista as he chased after me. It was not looking good for my first attempt, but I did a lot better than I expected. Obviously, I went down. I had to learn Magista's moves, but luckily for me, her being the first major boss, I was still doing decent damage. The real problem I had with her fight was how often she was spitting up gunk everywhere. Every single attempt, she spammed the hell out of her vomit attack, which made it hard to stay next to her since I had no good way to deal with the gunk status. After 16 being deaf to her, I had her moves down. Dodging all her moves and managing to avoid getting gunked, I finally had taken Magista down. From defeating her, I obtained the first adaptation, Royal Wave, one of the very few abilities I have access to for the entire run. Continuing forward, I made my way to New Carcinia. Going through the reef's edge, I got another death thanks to my least favorite enemy type in the game, the pufferfish. I skipped through the tutorial for rolling by just swimming and continuing to be the naked crab that I have become. Entering the city, I go around and speak to everyone about my shell, trash day starts and ends, and the journey for treasure begins. I was now headed to the next major point in my run, Pagurus the Ravenous. I knew this boss wasn't gonna be easy. I noticed that if I ran along the edge of the reef, he would leave until I set foot on the sand again. So my goal was to bring him to the edge and chip away at him slowly, forcing him to leave if I ever felt like I was gonna die. This strategy didn't work. Plus, it would have taken way too long. At this point, he had already killed me 12 times and I hadn't even gotten him to half health a single time. That was until attempt number 15, where I decided to run around and pick up my junk before he could come out, and noticed that he got stuck in the giant red box. He was really stuck in there, but I could still lock onto him, so I wanted to see if I could hit him too. After a few attempts at swinging at him, I managed to actually hit him.
It was time to fight.
This was officially gonna be my new strategy. It was gonna take a lot of patience, but it was worth it if it decreased the risk of me dying. The only problem was, he wasn't as dumb as I thought he was. After a little bit, he just walked out of it. He killed me very quickly after that. Although I died, I did have a new idea, and I decided to try the same strategy, but on the opposite side of the box, to see if he would stay stuck. It worked a lot better on this side of the box, but still, he realized he could just walk out and killed me again. I had faith in this plan though, so I stuck with it and I tried it one more time. This time around, I managed to keep him fully stuck in here. I slowly chipped away at him, bringing him closer and closer to death. He had gotten so close to death, and now he decided to get out of the box. So I decided to just jump off the cliff and see if that would despawn him. And thankfully, it actually worked. I immediately ran back to the side of the red box to continue chipping him down. This was such a slow process, and I was getting nervous because if I would have died, I would have to spend another 12 minutes chipping away at him. I played it safe and I took down Pagurus, obtaining one of the 3 map pieces I needed. I was making steady and good progress and was feeling extremely confident at this point. I decided to head over to the left side of the Sands Between, since you can pick up the Bobbit Trap adaptation here. It was one of the best adaptations in the game, and I knew it would help a lot for this run since it holds down enemies for a few seconds. But I got eaten by a sandworm and decided that I didn't need the ability at this point, and I would come back and get it once I did feel I needed it. I made my way to the next area, the forest. I skipped through all the enemies and ran straight to the next boss, the diseased lycanthrope. This was the easiest boss in the game, and I took him down in one try as I ran through the next part of the forest. On my way through, I do get sniped down once. I ran through again before I could get shot and get to the moonshell. From here, I had a thought. What if I could just skip this whole next area and get to the boss right away? I remembered that the shortcut to the boss of this area was right next to the moonshell, and I felt like I could make the jump over by using the slanted rocks on the landscape. I knew I had to at least try. This would save me a lot of time since I would be skipping a big chunk I had left of the forest area and getting straight to the boss without having to risk dying to all the enemies on the way to him. After dying twice trying to make the skip, I just barely managed to make it on the land above. Cutting down the shortcut, I made my way to the next boss, Heikea. This boss was the first real challenge of my run. There was no cheesing past him. I had to learn all his moves and fight him perfectly, since almost every move he had would one-shot me. My first 8 attempts were really bad, but on my 9th attempt, I got him down to half, his second phase where he breaks his chopsticks apart, giving him 2 weapons. I now had a new moveset to learn and ended up dying almost immediately. The problem now was learning to get him to phase 2 consistently, and I was not doing great. It wasn't until my 24th attempt that I got him down to phase 2 again. Then on my 27th, I got him down again. Still, it wasn't consistent enough, and he was killing me right away. It wasn't until attempt 43 where I started dodging attacks from his second phase, and then almost every attempt afterwards, I was consistently making it to phase 2. On my 55th attempt, it was like my mind's eye opened. I dodged everything perfectly, and I managed to take him down. I seriously felt so good, and this gave me the greatest confidence boost. I felt like I had this challenge in the bag. Little did I know how broken I would be by what was was to come. Since I had taken the second map piece, it was time to make my way to the next area, Flotsam Vale, the poison swamp area of the game. I had completely forgotten that in order to even enter Flotsam, you had to do a mini boss fight with Inkerton, a boss I would be dealing with later in the game. In order for me to even progress the game, I had to get his health down to here. So I had to learn his moveset quickly. This game has a lot of momentum glitches, so there would be times where I would dodge and then it would launch me. And this isn't just a problem of Inkerton. You're gonna see this momentum stuff happen later on in more extreme situations. On my 16th attempt, I took him down and had finally made it to Flotsam. Flotsam is big and filled with poison, so my first goal for this area was to find a way to skip to where I needed to be. I made my way to this pile of trash and tried to climb this wall, but it didn't work. After a couple more tries, I decided to try a different pile of trash. So I jumped this way and tried getting on this mountain of trash here. It didn't work either, but I just had a feeling in my gut I was headed in the right direction. I decided to try this little edge here and managed to get on the giant cube of trash, climbing over and skipping a huge chunk of Flotsam, making it to the cave that leads to the next map piece. Speeding through the cave and running past all the enemies, I had made it to the next boss. This was truly where I realized that this run was going to be a lot harder than I expected. They immediately killed me. My goal was to hard focus one of the sisters so that I only had to deal with the other one by itself. That was a lot easier said than done. The big problem was that I had to go to bed soon this night and I couldn't choose to ignore the boss for now since I had found none of the moon shells in Flotsam besides the very first one, and I did not want to have to run back through all the poison to get back to this boss. This boss was ridiculous. There was only one attack I could survive, but if I got hit by it, there was the possibility of the sisters comboing me with their shots. 50 attempts later and I still had made no progress. I couldn't even take one of the sisters down. I had no clue how I was gonna take them both down. I knew it wasn't impossible, but I needed to dodge everything I could and I had no idea how. It wasn't until my 86th attempt where this happened. I killed one of the sisters. At this point, I was motivated. Even though I was killed by the other sister right after, I could see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and the grind continued. On my 173rd try against the sisters, I managed to take down one of the sisters again, and this time I wasn't gonna throw my chance. At this point, I already knew the dodge timing for all their attacks, so I was hard focused on making sure I wasn't gonna get hit. I became really anxious and my heart was racing, but I played it patiently and took down the other sister. Getting rid of the hardest boss in the game at this point, which gave me the bubble bullet ability that I wasn't gonna use much in my run. I climbed up and grabbed the final map piece, grabbed the moonshot at the shipping port, and headed to New Carcinia. I put together the map and headed back to Flotsam to enter the next area, the factory. The factory is the next spot where 2 shells are mandatory to continue, since we gotta use the fuse plugs to power on all the devices throughout the factory and the spring to be pulled to the next areas on the magnet. Making my way through the factory, I end up dying a few times to some of the enemies and some platforming. At this point, I tried to skip the entirety of the factory by jumping straight to the boss, who is right inside this building, but none of the pipes around the building have any surface area and I end up just sliding off them every time. This sucked, cause that meant I had to actually go through the factory, which was easily my least favorite area to deal with. I did end up finding a skip to get past one of the more annoying fuse plugs you're supposed to get to progress. If you climb up this wall by platforming on the trash below it, you can land on top of the hook holding these gas tanks and just jump across to the next area without having to find the fuse plug. And this next fuse plug is the final one I need in order to get to the next boss. I managed to loop this guy around so I could grab the fuse, switch on the power, and get to the next boss in the game, Volte. This was the next roadblock. Without fighting her, I wouldn't be able to get to the last half of the game since I needed her ability to progress. It was time to learn a new boss. The fight with Volte is interesting because it gets split into multiple rounds based on the electrical stuff she can plug into herself. The fight always starts with what looks like a hairdryer, and from there she can use any of the 3 other electrical items in the room. The toaster, what I think is a Wi-Fi amplifier, and hold on, is that a vibrator?
Hell no.
I had to learn the timing of all 4 separate items if I was gonna beat her. The strategy I got working was dodging all 3 shots from the hairdryer and getting a charge attack on her. It was just rinse and repeat until she swapped over to the next item. The vibrator was definitely the easiest of the 4 to avoid since she took a little break between each swing of it, giving me enough time to get get a charge attack in before dodging again. I mainly had to avoid her chin because she had two variations of her chin attack. One was a single pound of the chin and the other was two, which added just an extra layer to what I had to avoid. Then there was the toaster, which was one of the slower paced ones, so it was easy to get a hang of, but I would get smacked by the toast way more than I should have. And lastly, the Wi-Fi amplifier was definitely the hardest one at first. She would shoot out giant electrical waves that were hard to avoid, which took me a bit to get used to since she would switch their timing, shooting either one wave or multiple waves at once. There was one more thing that could kill me in this first phase, and that was her body as she moved between items. It actually did do damage and caught me more than it should have. On the 10th attempt, I had gotten her to the second phase, where the arena gets flooded and poisoned, extremely limiting the space I had to avoid her attacks. She killed me pretty much immediately, so I worked my way back. I started running towards the last item before she would reach it, since it allowed me to get in a couple hits before she could attack me. I was also using Royal Wave a lot when she would use the toaster to speed through it a little more. On my 21st attempt, I had finally gotten her down to the second phase once more. I was still struggling with dodging the electrical waves, but couldn't see a better way to get through it faster as I didn't have time to do a charge attack before her next wave. Attempt 30, I got her to second phase again, then 31, and at this point, I had found a consistent strategy for the Wi-Fi amp that made the item go from the hardest to the easiest one to deal with consistently. Attempt 40, 42, 44. I had made it to the second phase over and over again, but I just could not get through the hairdryer once the poison came in, so I decided I didn't care about the poison and just rolled through it even if the status was going up slowly. Because Volte didn't switch items until she lost a certain amount of health, I could sit on the platform until the gunk was gone and go back to fighting her. On attempt 50, I got through 3 of the 4 items Volte could use. All I had left to deal with was the toaster, so I took my time and managed to beat her with no heals left. Any hit would have been the end.
Thanks for playing with.
Getting the electrocute ability from her, I could finally leave the factory and move on to the next goal. It was time to finally take care of Roland. Something really stupid happened where my ability refused to hit the other power part and I had to go to the moon shell to refresh my umami. Thankfully, it worked fine the second time around. Skipping through the dialogue and doing a little bit of platforming, I made my way to Roland. This boss was a major wall in my journey to beat this challenge. I had to learn how to dodge all his attacks and he was fast too. This was the first boss in the game where I very quickly noticed how little damage I was actually doing. I couldn't do much at the start. My first few attempts were just for learning, which really didn't help because he killed me so fast that I didn't get to see many of his moves. By the time that I had already done 60 attempts, this was the farthest that I had gotten him down. Every other boss at this point besides the Ceviche Sisters were either dead or showed that I was getting a lot better at their fight. But Roland was different. After seeing how little progress I was making, I decided to stop recording for that night and come back the next day. I got up at 7:30 in the morning, brushed my teeth, ate breakfast, and at 8 a.m. I was fighting Roland. At this point, my computer was low on storage, so I couldn't keep recording constantly. So I had to choose moments when to record, and I wasn't recording most of his fight because I wasn't making any steady progress. As the deaths continued to pile on, I had gotten much better at dodging his attacks, and coming up with a strategy where I would purposely roll into the pin machine bumpers to avoid his hard to dodge attacks. At this point, nothing seemed to be working, and I was making no progress. I seriously almost gave up on the challenge here because I didn't think it was possible, but I decided to try one other thing. I left Roland and went back to the sands between to pick up the bobbit trap. I had told myself earlier that I would save it for later, and now was the time to get it. It was one of the few things I hadn't tried yet, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and this is where I finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. See, the bobbit trap is a great adaptation, holding enemies in place, making it easy for me to get a few hits in. But another thing I learned about the bobbit trap was its glitchy behavior. On one of my attempts after getting the bobbit trap, I completely accidentally ended up pushing Roland out of bounds with the bobbit trap, getting him stuck on the trash around the pinball machine, which you can't normally climb. He ended up getting stuck in a way where he couldn't come back and where I couldn't reach him, so I had to restart the fight. I decided to test out a theory and see if it was something I could replicate, and it was. All the mental anguish I had been suffering had disappeared. All I had in my mind was one thing. I had to get Roland stuck somewhere where I could slowly chip away at him, but he couldn't reach me. So I tried and tried and tried and tried and kept dying and dying until attempt 659. For absolutely no reason, Roland was just stuck in place. The biggest Joker smile hit my face as I carefully chipped him down since he could still very easily kill me. This was the farthest I had gotten him down, and I could feel the end was near, and then
You should have known.
I fucked up. Immediate grief and distraught struck me. I felt like a total jackass. It was the freest kill and I threw it away. It took me 27 more attempts until I managed to push Roland behind the bumpers in a perfect position to do damage and avoid dying. I made sure to be extra careful as I worked my way down to killing him. I was almost there. I was almost at the end of the tunnel. I was almost out until...
End of the line, small fry.
I couldn't reach him anymore. This move right here put him at a distance where I could just barely not reach him. And with no umami, I couldn't do anything to get him unstuck. So I had to reset. I was so close and now I had to redo the whole fight again. So I tried getting him in that position again. And a few attempts later, I did. But this time, I wasn't gonna waste my umami. I made sure to conserve it in case I needed to get him unstuck as I beat him down slowly. And this time... I had taken Roland down over 16 hours and 692 attempts later, and I had finally taken down the biggest roadblock to the end. Oh, and this was also one of the only times I recorded my mic during my challenge. Yes. If it wasn't for the bobbit trap, I would have probably ended the run here. But now it was time to head through the unfathom. Letting Krill get bodied, I rushed through, heading straight to the next boss. But a random fish kills me, making me have to travel through it all over again. Making my way through, I had reached the next boss, Petroch, the fake moonshell, who I thought was going to be one of the easier bosses since I beat him on my first try in my initial playthrough. I was so wrong. Petroch would spawn in crystals that could explode, swing at me, roll at me, jump attack, and parry me. Every single attack one-shotting me. After 22 attempts with little to no progress, I stopped playing for the day. I was so drained from Roland earlier, I didn't want to deal with this at this point. When I loaded up the game the next day, something strange really happened. I had to do all the cutscenes again, which led to an interesting glitch. It's what I'm calling Nema here and Nema there. Making my way back to him, I decided to run around and explore the boundaries of the fight a little, finding this rock that I could sit on that helped me avoid some of his attacks. I thought I would be safe, but his attacks ended up being able to track me up there, killing me again. I did manage to get him stuck on the rock, but he just swung at me afterwards, since he could easily reach me still. On my 38th attempt, I fought him straight up, dodging a lot of his attacks and knocking him down for the first time. Still again, I ended up dying. On my 49th attempt, I learned that if I ran behind this pillar that was in the area, I could hit him through it and dodge a few of his attacks a lot easier. But just like on the rock, he jumped on it and hit me from above. I felt that this pillar was my best bet to cheese him out and win, but in the end, he could hit me a lot easier than I could hit him. So I gave up on the pillar and decided to just stay close and fight him for real. That was until my 119th attempt, where I decided to just explore the boundaries of the area before activating his fight. That was when I noticed this shortcut and how low the door was, and how some of the rocks next to it looked like potential platforms. At this point, I still hadn't seen a speedrun of this game, so I didn't know about fork boosting and how easily I could have made it over this wall, but thanks to this game's interesting landscape design, I found a way to run up this wall and use the momentum to swim on this rock and jump over the wall, skipping Petroch's fight completely and grabbing the next moonshell by carefully running through this danger zone. Doing this skip saved me a lot of time since I didn't have to deal with Petroch or the area leading up to this next fight, a fight that was teased much earlier in the run. It was time to fight Inkerton. Even though I had already seen the cutscene in my initial playthrough, I wanted to see Inkerton shoot Roland again just for making me suffer for so long before I skipped the cutscene and began the fight.
You live!
I died pretty much immediately. One really good thing about the fight with Inkerton in Flotsam Vale is that it allowed me to learn the timing of 3 of his swings, so all I had to do was learn his other attacks. The bobbit trap also helped a lot since it helped me build his stagger bar up a lot faster than I would have normally. One thing that was really tough about this fight was how glitchy the boss arena was sometimes. In certain spots with the junk on the ground, I would just not be able to roll. Attempt after attempt after attempt, nothing crazy happened until my 200th attempt, when I had gotten him over 50% of health. I was locked in at this point, and as the fight continued, I could taste victory. That was until here, where I paused the game. I had to stop mid-fight to do something, so all my focus faded in that short time, and I died for it. Right here, my mental had shattered. I screamed, felt all the energy inside me drain out like a stream of piss. I couldn't believe it and stayed there for a little, just astonished at what had happened. I couldn't stop though. I knew I had to continue and kept on fighting. See, just like with Roland, I had also tested the boundaries of this arena with the bobbit trap, pushing Inkerton out of bounds a few times, but differently from Roland, he would just float back in, except this time, he had fallen off, but he seemed to have landed on a platform under the floor and didn't fall to his death. I did try my best to influence his movements to try to make him fall off, but nothing was working. There There was nothing I could do, so I reset the fight, but the potential for him falling off was still in the back of my mind. On attempt 298, I got really close once more, but sadly, he got a hit on me and I had to try it all over again. Like I said earlier, my computer was so low on storage, I couldn't record every attempt. So when it hit my 369th attempt, I had managed to push Inkerton out of bounds again, but this time, he fell all the way off the map, dying and ending the struggle, allowing me to progress and get to the next area, the old ocean. I knew he was totally possible without glitching him, and I would have killed him too if I didn't mess up at the most dire moment. But I couldn't keep my mind in the past. It was time to keep moving forward. See, I had made it to the old ocean, which was the area I was least excited for. It's a long and really tough area to get through.
Bruh. Bro! No way.
And with everything at this point killing me in one hit, I wanted to avoid as much game as possible. So I decided to finally watch a speedrun of the game, but the skip for the old ocean was something I had no idea how to even achieve with no upgrades at all. That was until this video popped up on my recommended. How to skip old ocean in another crab's treasure. The video piqued my interest since I wanted to get through the area with as little difficulty as possible. And it showed me this. If you go to this spot here in the Bleach City and fall off this edge here, then return to title screen and load your save up right away, you spawn at this moon shell where everything in the world is deloaded. From here, you have to enter the moon shell and warp to the moon snail's domain. When you do, instead of warping you to the moon snail, it takes you to Carcinia, the Bleach City, which is the moon shell right in front of the next boss. It also causes this weird effect on the screen and slows Krill down significantly. But from here, all you gotta do is quit the game and reopen, and when you do, you've just skipped the entirety of the old ocean. Thanks to Yeun for the skip. Link in the description to the original video. Now, I had to fight the king, but did I really have to? That's what I wanted to find out for myself. I ran straight to him to see if it was possible to just run behind him and up the stairs, but a magic barrier gets placed that stops you from continuing forward. Still, I felt like it had to be possible to get behind him, so I tried running against the left side of the wall so he wouldn't activate right away, and actually ended up behind the barrier in the stairs. But he could still hit me and ended up hitting me out of the barrier and I couldn't re-enter it. Seeing that I got in there in the first place though, I knew I could do it. So I tried again, getting a little higher up but still getting killed. After a few attempts of trying to skip past him through the left side of the wall, I decided to try running against the right wall to see if it would make any difference, and it did. Before he could wake up, I managed to get up the stairs almost to the top, but he killed me again. I knew the right side of the wall was the way now, and I tried again, and on my second attempt, I managed to do a jump attack and use a bounce on his leg to push me out of bounds of the fight. From here, all I had to do was use the toilet paper as a platform and dive into the toilet, completely skipping the fight and arriving at the final area in the game to fight the next boss, Pryor Dubia. See, this boss was a handful. In order for me to even do any damage to her, I had to deal with all the crabs she spawned in first. All the crabs could one-shot me, and she was firing explosion balls at me the entire time too. Right away, I ran around the arena to see if there was any possible way to break through the boundaries of the fight. Sadly, there wasn't, so I had to fight this boss fair and square. I quickly learned that the explosive balls she threw could also damage the other crabs, so I made sure to use that to my advantage from now on. I still had to learn her attacks for when I could actually hit her. She had 3 different swings, a vertical slice that was very easy to dodge, and then 2 horizontal slices she could throw out that had 2 different timings. Sometimes she would go fast, sometimes a little slow. I was making little to no progress for a while on this boss. That was until I accidentally discovered that there was a way to get her to damage herself with the explosive balls using the pillars in the area. Just by positioning myself by this specific pillar, the explosive ball's blast radius would hit her and slowly chip at her health, and I was willing to sit here until she died. The strategy only works until her health bar gets down to the S, which is when she starts shooting down lasers from the sky, something I was not prepared for the first time around. See, the main problem with my strategy is that the crab she spawned in could still kill me while she chipped at her health. So how would I get into a situation where a crab couldn't reach me while I waited for her health to drain? In this game, one of the shells you can get is the crab husk, which is a shell that can spawn in when you kill certain crabs. Relying on a lot of luck, I would kill 2 crabs and get their husks next to each other. I would then kill all the crabs until 1 crab was left and run around the husks until the other crab got stuck between them. Since the crabs tend to head head straight to you and don't really walk around the husk. From there, I would get Pryor Dubia into this position against the pillar and begin the waiting game. It wasn't a guaranteed strategy, but it was the best thing I managed to find myself to get through this fight with the littlest struggle. All I had to worry about was once I got Praya to the S, I had to start dodging lasers. See, even with this new strategy, I was struggling. It wasn't consistent, and I still wasn't used to dodging the lasers at this point. It also took a lot of time. I would be slowly chipping away at her health anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. However, I did learn how to fork boost after watching one speedrun of the game, and I wanted to see if it was possible to use fork boosting to get out of bounds. That was when I learned you can actually land on top of the barrier in the center that blocks the perfect whirl. You're not safe though, since Praya's explosions kill you through the wall. I wanted to see if it was possible to slowly gain height by jumping on the barrier and jumping up over and over again. But after a few attempts at it, it didn't seem possible. So I set my mind to mastering the tactic I had found, the Pog, the Praya waiting game. Slowly but surely, she drained her health as I made sure to dodge all the lasers. The lasers sometimes even doing damage to her too. On my 260th attempt, I almost got her to phase 2, but I mistimed the dodge on the laser and had to try again. On attempt 279, I had made it to phase 2 for the first time. I wanted to see how far out the boundary had extended. It didn't extend too much farther, and I ended up getting caught in the triple laser combo. 7 attempts after that one, I made it to phase 2 once more, and this time I focused on dodging, and at almost half health, the third laser in the laser combo had killed me. Remember earlier how I told you that the momentum was going to be crazy in this game? Well, on attempt 290, Praya ended up launching me out of bounds using the momentum from one of the explosions that launched one of the crabs into me, throwing me straight out of bounds for the first time. I was able to just sit here and wait while she chipped herself. It wasn't completely safe. The lasers could still reach me, so I had to make sure to dodge them, but this was a lot easier than being next to her. I also wanted to see if she would keep trying to attack me if I went further away, but she stopped, so I had to stay within range of her lasers. I was hoping and praying that when the second phase started, I would stay out of bounds, but it teleported me in and I ended up dying right away. I made it to second phase again on attempt 293, but ended up dying right away again. And it wasn't until attempt 300 where I managed to avoid everything and finally beat Pryor Dubia. I was so excited. I was so close to the end. All I had left in this challenge was the final boss, Firth. It was just one more roadblock until the credits could scroll. Skipping the cutscene, I made my way to the surface, platforming on some trash, and starting the fight with Firth. The interesting thing about the fight with Firth is he doesn't attack me until I attack him first. I took that to my advantage to explore the boundaries of the boss arena and see if there was any point I could potentially push Firth out of bounds to his death using the bobbit trap. I found only 3 points that seemed low enough to possibly push him off, and from there decided it was time to test the waters with him. I threw my bobbit trap out right away to try and catch him, but he teleported behind me, avoiding it. I dodged a couple attacks and led him into the trap, taking the opportunity to get a few hits in. At this point, dodging was my main focus. I got a hit or two in while avoiding Firth as much as possible. I eventually ended up running to one of the low points in the arena to try to lead Firth over, and he does come to me, but he teleports straight into me, the momentum from it launching me to the other side of the boss stage. He had gotten stuck in the low point and couldn't run out of it. I had gotten him glitched on my first attempt. Sadly, Firth was able to get out of being stuck by just teleporting towards me, meaning getting him stuck in one spot was not gonna work. Trying my best to get him to a position to push him off, I ended up getting hit by his bubble blaster, which I could actually survive, but after that, he caught me with a swing of his spoon and killed me. I jumped straight into it again, trying to lead him to the spot he had gotten stuck in to try and push him off, but again, his spoon caught me and I died. This time, I tried to force him towards a low spot using the pushback from the bobbit trap, but as soon as I got closer to the edge, he took me out again. The next 3 attempts, he killed me very quickly. On my 7th attempt at him, I finally managed to get close enough to a low spot to push him off, but the boundary just pushes him back on, meaning I couldn't get him stuck anywhere since he just teleported me, and I couldn't push him off with the trap. I didn't want to just give up on the bobbit trap though. I didn't know for sure if the trap didn't work, so I kept trying, but no success. Death upon death piled on, and in over 164 attempts, this was the farthest I had made it. Firth has so many moves, and one of the combos he does has a swing that's too fast to dodge if you're close to him. And his version of Royal Wave was so difficult to dodge. It felt like the dodge timing for it was inconsistent, and it caught me so many times. But now by this point, I had a partial plan where I would set the bobbit trap in front of him before I initiated the fight, since Firth always teleports behind you at the start of the fight, which guaranteed him getting caught, allowing me to get a few hits in. After that, it was all about dodging and getting a few hits in whenever I could. The deaths continued to roll in and no progress was being made, so on attempt 300, I decided to swap out Royal Wave for the bubble bullet to see if anything could change. I was trying to use the bubble bullet to hit him from far to force him to teleport behind me at the low spots, but I would just get catapulted each time. I decided to keep doing it to see if he could launch me out of bounds, but it seemed like the boundary was way higher up than any of the previous bosses. On attempt 343, I managed to get him stuck again, and he wasn't teleporting, but he was swinging so much I couldn't get a hit in and he killed me right away. Nothing else happened for a while as the death counter continued to rise, until the craziest thing happened on attempt 442. I was using the bubble bullet again to try and get Firth stuck again, but instead, he launched me so high up, I ended up landing on an invisible platform. I tried leading him over to me, but he couldn't reach me and there was no way I could reach him. I fell off and ended up taking fall damage, but instead of spawning next to him, I spawned on top of the platform again. I decided to run around and see if there was any spot he could glitch off of, but I ended up falling again, and this time, I didn't take any damage. I ended up stuck in this unloaded zone where the fight first starts. I began moving around to see if I could find a platform or a way to spawn back near Firth, but nothing happened. I was so confused. I have no idea what is going on. What is this? What is happening? I was here for 5 minutes trying to see if there was anything I could do. There was seriously nothing, so I ended up having to reload my save and restart the fight. When I got back to Firth, he instantly killed me and it was back to grinding. On attempt 459, after so long with no progress, I managed to bring his health down to here. This was the best I had done against him after 459 attempts. I knew this fight was gonna take me so much longer. I hadn't gotten him halfway and he still had a second phase. On attempt 627, I learned something major that I would use for the rest of my attempts. Firth actually gets stuck against the shells on the ground, and in this spot with the soda can and pill bottle, it's much easier to distance yourself and get hits in because the two shells are so close to each other. Now it was just about taking my time and dodging his moves as good as I could, and on attempt 702, I managed to get him halfway for the first time. This is where things changed, since he gets a new move, the trash sword. I ran back, and he ended up swinging all the way towards me, killing me as soon as I had made more progress. But my slowly draining mental state had started to regain some hope. 39 more attempts later, I got him halfway once again and again died instantly. Another 209 attempts later, I got him halfway and managed to dodge the trash sword for the first time and was immediately caught by another swing from it. On attempt 982, I wanted to try something I never tried my entire run, something the game itself says wouldn't work. I decided to equip some stowaways. And remember how I said this at the start of the video? There's these things called stowaways in the game that you can equip that give you different stat buffs and passives. The thing is, they only work if you have a shell. I noticed that even though I had no shell, my stats still changed, but I wasn't sure if this was just a visual glitch on the game's part or if it was actually in effect. So I ran into the fight and swung at him. I noticed I was swinging faster and that I was doing less damage, but still, I wasn't 100% sure till this happened. I was revived by the crab stowaway, and here I began ascending. I knew at this point exactly what I needed to do. After a couple attempts, I reloaded my save and went back to the places I knew from memory had revived stowaways. I picked up whatever revives I could remember, giving me a total of 4. I saved and went back to Firth. Now I had more than one chance to kill him, and getting hit didn't mean an instant loss. This right away made it so much easier to get past half health, but this fight still wasn't easy, and the struggle was nowhere near over. Attempt 1042, I had gotten super close. I still had 2 revives, and all I had to do was make sure I dodged a few attacks to make it to phase 2. But right as I was 2 hits away, he killed me. I was almost there. I could feel phase 2 on the tip of my tongue. I just had to stay calm and not get greedy. 9 attempts later, on attempt 1051, I finally got Firth down and made it to phase 2 for the first time in this fight. I still had 3 revives left, so I was confident and nervous. Obviously, I didn't know his move's dodge timings yet, and I knew if I died, I was gonna have to restart the fight from the first phase. I didn't know how to dodge his attacks yet, and quickly, my revives were drained. Without any revives, I knew it was over for me, and I died. I was frustrated, but still, I had made so much progress from when I first started, I knew I could do it. A few attempts later, I made it to phase 2 once more, and this time, I got him almost halfway before he finished me off. Attempt 1064, I had improved so much at dodging his attacks, as they were a bit easier to avoid than his attacks in phase 1, getting him down to about 25% health. I was beginning to see the end. Firth was almost down. I just had to keep making it to phase 2 with at least 3 of my revives and dodge his moves well. And then, 5 attempts later, attempt 1069, I hard focused and this happened. Finally, I knocked Firth down, running straight to the last required shell in the game, the perfect whirl, putting it on and finishing the fight. Firth was finally defeated.
So that maybe one day other people won't have to fight like me. And what better way to start than to beat up a selfish, greedy, muscle shocker like Wait.
After watching him get crushed under the boot, I made my way to Pronathin. No talking, I just killed him. As I looked at the screen, level 0, no upgrades, and no shells. I had been through the toughest challenge I could think of for this game, and after 80 hours and 2,895 deaths, I had done it. Putting on the home shell, the final cutscene began. Saying my final words,
and others still will never rest in one place for long.
So much time.
As this fragile world begins to fracture,
But I finally
no matter
did
how
it.
large or small,
I killed that
the one
asshole
thing no
Pronathin,
creature can afford
and I
is
did it.
complacency.
Oh my god.
I had finally reached the end. This challenge was insane, but it gave me a new appreciation of the game. I loved it after my first playthrough and loved it even more after this challenge. I just wanted to say a message to Aggro Crab. You made a masterpiece, and I really want a Krill plushie. I would love it if you guys sent me one, and I can't wait for your future projects. Anyways, thanks for watching till the end, you mother shuckers.